let's start this up. And here's a better view of the presentation. And we begin with the definition of HIB. The H stands for harassment, basically aggressive behavior or hassling someone. The I stands for intimidation, which means to frighten. And lastly, bullying, which is to use strength or power over someone to coerce them. And the key point there is power, because as we go through this, you're going to realize that bullying is based on an imbalance of power. Cyberbullying, which is electronic bullying. In today's era, students are often bullied electronically. In fact, it happens more often than you would think. And social media is the common place where bullying occurs. Where can bullying take place? Well, HIB can occur in the following places. It can happen on school property. It can happen on school-sponsored events, such as maybe in the locker room of a basketball team. And it can actually occur off school grounds. Yes, HIB can occur off school grounds if it interferes with the school's day-to-day operations or violates the student's rights. Incidents. For HIB to occur, an actual incident has to take place. So if a student has discriminatory feelings about another race or another group, there still must be an action for it to be HIB. For example, if a student might say something like, "Oh, I think this gender or this sexuality is all evil," just because they think something doesn't make it HIB. They have to actually act on it and cause an incident. Let's go over some types of HIB. The first type is a gesture. A gesture in itself can be an act of bullying, whether it's lifting up your hand towards somebody and making a fist or giving a middle finger. Students physically bully others by pushing, hitting, and violent acts. And lastly, very common, is verbal abuse, which includes threats and insults and demeaning comments. Characteristics. Well, individuals are often singled out or bullied because of a specific characteristic they possess. Those students are picked on because of that characteristic, and some of those characteristics include race, religion, disability, gender. The list goes on and on, but we just have a couple listed here. And now let's talk about some programs that, alright, here are a couple guidelines. Schools and districts should annually establish, implement, and document, as well as assess HIB prevention programs. Okay. They should involve all staff members and even involve law enforcement, community, volunteers. Everybody needs to get involved and take a part in HIB. Instruction. Throughout the school year, the school district actually must provide instruction on character education and age-appropriate instruction on the prevention of HIB. So you can't just assume students are going to know not to bully. You have to instruct them and teach. And lastly, what's up? Week of respect. Week of respect. School districts must annually, once a year, observe the Week of Respect, and it's always the same time. It's the first Monday in October, and the main purpose of this week is to recognize the importance of character education and age-appropriate instruction on HIB prevention. As we mentioned earlier, schools actually have to instruct students and teach them about HIB. Okay. Let's take a look at the whole presentation again. And we talked a little bit about definition. Then we went on to programs. And what do we have next? Let's find out. Policy. Every school is required to have an HIB policy. And the policy itself has to have a couple of components, about 12 different components. We're going to go over the components here, and then I'll actually show you a school policy where they have all 12 components. So let's start this up. First off, a definition. There must be a definition of HIB in the school policy, and it can be no less inclusive than the statutory definition. So that means at the very least they should have the state's definition on the website. They could have more if they want, but at the very least just the state's definition. There also must be a statement prohibiting HIB. Somewhere in the district policy, this statement has to be visible. Usually it's very at the top, and usually it's the first one. Reporting procedures. HIB will also contain certain procedures for reporting acts of HIB. The policy should contain a provision that permits a person for reporting acts anonymously, and we'll get into detail on this in another bubble. Investigation. Policy should contain procedures for investigation. Just as it contains procedures for reporting HIB, there also need to be procedures for investigating the act of HIB. Expected behavior is part of an HIB policy. It's not enough to just have a statement prohibiting HIB, but there should be policy saying what's the positive behaviors you expect, right? What are the expected behaviors from students? Just don't say what they shouldn't do, say what they should do, right? Say how they should behave. This means a range of responses. So in case HIB actually happens, there should be a bunch of different options, a range of options on how to deal with HIB, consequences, and remediation. So let's check this out. A district policy should include a range of ways in which a school will respond once an incident of HIB has occurred. The range of responses will be defined by the principal and the anti-bullying specialist. They're going to help the principal out to determine these range of responses and to determine what's appropriate and what isn't. Okay, consequences. Now we talk about a range of responses. You have consequences in those range of responses. So the policy, the HIB policy on the school website must include the consequences and remedial actions that are appropriate for students. And, okay, reprisal. Just as a policy must have a statement prohibiting HIB, there should also be a statement that prohibits the reprisal or retaliation against a person who reports HIB. So if a student reports, so there should be a statement that prohibits any retaliation against a person for telling about HIB. Okay, falsely accused. The policy should contain both consequences and remedial actions for anybody responsible for falsely accusing another person of HIB. Because these HIB investigations, they take time, they're very serious. So students shouldn't just go around, and not just students, staff members, they shouldn't go around and just accuse somebody. Especially, they shouldn't go around and just falsely accuse someone. So if they do falsely accuse someone, they themselves should have consequences and actions taken against them. A link to the homepage. Okay, a link to an HIB policy should be posted publicly and prominently on the homepage of your school district website. So you can check that out wherever you work and see if that's available. Contact information. Contact information for the district's anti-bullying coordinator and the anti-bullying specialist has to be listed on the district homepage. So let's go back and take a look at the entirety of the presentation. Okay, we talked about its definition, some programs, we went a little bit into policy, what's next. Functions. And we'll start with the anti-bullying coordinator. Okay, the anti-bullying coordinator has a couple responsibilities. First off, they have to strengthen the HIB policy, which we just talked about in the 12 different components. They also provide data to the CSA, the chief. Okay, the anti-bullying specialist. Okay, they're responsible to lead the school safety team, and they lead it with the principal. They work with the principal with investigations, and they do most of the work. They act as the primary school official responsible for preventing HIB, and they have a lot of weight on their shoulders. They assist the principal in determining the responses and the implementation. the school safety team. And let's talk about who makes up the school safety team. All right, the school safety team, the SST, they are formed in each school, and they're made up of, at minimum, at least a principal or a designee for the principal, a teacher, the anti-bullying specialist, a parent of a student in the school, and most of the time a student as well. Now, what are the responsibilities of this team, of the school safety team? Well, at a minimum, they have to meet twice each year, and they review complaints of H.I.B. They receive copies of the investigation, and they look to identify patterns. They analyze data, and they look to really improve school climate, as we'll see next. All right, so school climate, and how does that affect the school safety team? Well, it's responsible to develop, foster, and maintain a positive school climate. That's one of their biggest goals. And they do that by addressing H.I.B. because H.I.B. is directly linked to school climate, and you can see that in the research on the Department of Education's website. Okay, so let's see the grand scheme again. All right, so we've done definition. We talked about the programs. We talked about the policy. We went over staff functions. Let's see what's next. And now we're going to training requirements. First off, the anti-bullying specialist and the anti-bullying coordinator. And the Board of Ed must provide time during the school year to schedule training for both the anti-bullying coordinator and the anti-bullying specialist. And it's the Commissioner of Education that makes available these in-service workshops. The Board of Education, yes, they have to get training on H.I.B. as well. And they have to get this training within 1 year of being elected or being appointed to the Board of Education. And their training is actually provided by the School Boards Association on H.I.B. Free for anyone. On the New Jersey Department of Education website, there's an online tutorial available and free for anyone. This entire presentation is based off the New Jersey Department of Education website. All I really did was take that and put this together. Okay, all staff. School districts must provide training on the Board of Education H.I.B. policy for all staff. It doesn't matter if it's full-time, if it's part-time. It doesn't matter if it's the lunch, people who contracted to do school lunches. If a volunteer works there, they have to get training. So it's for everybody, this H.I.B. training. The school leaders, your principals, supervisors, administrators, school leaders and staff members who hold a position that requires a chief school administrator, a principal, a supervisor, they have to complete training as well. And they also have to complete training on school ethics, school law, and school governance. And let's talk about teachers now. What type of training do they have to get? Well, their H.I.B. training also corresponds with their professional development. In addition to the district's in-service trainings, which they do, during a 5-year staff development period, teachers have to complete professional development hours at a minimum of H.I.B. for 2 hours and suicide prevention. So let's take a look at the next one. Other training, and that would be the suicide prevention, right? So you have to do 2 hours of H.I.B. training, and you have to do 2 hours of suicide prevention. And there's actually a big link between suicide and H.I.B. It says here that suicide prevention includes information on the relationship between the risk of suicide and incidence of H.I.B., and it provides information on reducing the risk of suicide. Okay, let's look at everything from afar. So we've done the definition, programs, policy, staff function, training, and all that we have left is public reporting. And let's check this out, public reporting. And first off, the school report card. Purpose. Okay, the purpose of the grade, and this is the grade from the school report card, is to assess the school's effort on, implementing the policy. How are they doing? How do they determine the grade? They do it with the guidelines by the Commissioner of Education. And listen, this grade has to be posted on the web. And it actually has to be posted within 10 days of receiving the grade. And lastly, the chief school administrator. The chief school administrator must report at public hearings to the Board of Ed twice each year, and they have to report any act of violence, vandalism, HIB occurring. So whenever something like that happens, they have to report it to the Board of Education. And some examples of it include the number of reports of HIB. They have to tell the number, what happened with each investigation, the nature. They also have to talk about protected categories. What was it based on any of those characteristics? Nature of the discipline imposed. And there it is. So right now I'd just like to say thank you for your time, and please watch the next video on the HIB training, which I